Okay. I believe we are now live with one thumbs up, no people, according to that. Okay. Let me add Mr. Billy Elsworth. Oh, wait. How do I do that? No, plus. There we go, plus. There we go. We got 4 people watching, sir.
All right.
And just in case they're wondering about our attire, I'm still a Southern gentleman, but of course, given the war in Israel, I am wearing my French Foreign Legion desert hat. You know, as I expect that we Southern boys will get drafted. That's what happens.
There ain't no better warrior than a man from the South. So.
Well, that's true, sir. That's true. I'm sorry. I'm drinking here one of those Latino concoctions. It's a little espresso that I believe has been corrected, as they say, with vodka. It's disgusting, but I kind of.
I believe the preferred nomenclature for that is Latinx now. That is the genderless phraseology.
Well, genderless. What? Sorry. What kind of heresy are you speaking there now, sir? You mean sexless? That's the correct use of the language. Don't bastardize our heritage as good Southern men that speak proper American.
Well, you mentioned your hat. I'll talk about mine. This is my wife's Auburn Tigers hat.
Is that
Auburn
to do with
football.
the gender thing? I mean, why are you wearing your
No,
wife's hat? No, no.
no. This is it's in Alabama we know a thing or two about what Israel and Hamas is going through in Palestine because
Uh-huh.
we have Alabama and Auburn football, so we
Ah,
know
yeah.
about
Just the same.
across the Bible.
Yeah,
So it's exactly the same. In
yeah.
fact, I think that if they really want to solve their problems, they really should have a Palestinian and Israeli uh,
Football
uh,
teams. Yeah.
American football team. Yeah, yeah.
That sounds sensible to me.
Be
And I
way
mean,
better than bombing each other, for God's sake.
well, I mean, I think we should really get deep into this important globally, you know, relevant sort of thing. And it's, there's war in like Ukraine. There's apparently gonna be war in Israel or somewhere there. Like as soon as the rain stops, I believe there's some rain, so
Mhm.
they're kind of waiting for that to die out.
I, I mean, I think that the biggest losers in this Middle East conflict is, in fact, Ukraine.
I don't
I
know
mean,
because I thought the whole point of Ukraine was it was going to become the next Israel. So maybe if the
well, no one's
Israeli,
talking about Ukraine anymore, so that Zelensky fella ain't getting none of his celebrity visits anymore because it's all
yeah,
about Palestine.
well, yeah, but I mean, if Ukraine's going to become the next Israel, then he should go quiet because Netanyahu's going to take over, right, and become
Yeah,
the Ukrainian president. I assume, which will
I,
mean there's no more trouble in the Middle East then, because well, it'll all be Arabs, I guess.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I read in the book of Revelations that the third temple is going to be built in Kiev.
And they've got those like 5 heifers, the red heifer things. Well,
Yeah,
5? Is
yeah.
it 5?
You got me by the short hairs. I don't know.
Well, I think we should get into the really important global issues, though. So I think I'll just, without any further ado, regardless of the fact that we only have a couple of non-Philistines with us here at the moment. Not sure why that is. I did announce that we would be having a Southern Gentleman Convention on Global Affairs. But be that as it may, the really important things in the world right now is that governor of yours in Alabama. Very disturbing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Um,
Ivy.
can you take us through the pain that you've been going through in that godforsaken hole that has become Alabama? That now that you have that woman governor or whatever.
Well, that is up for some debate. She is a spinster. She's never been
Ah,
married.
oh,
A lot of people think she's got her a little girlfriend, but but I don't know.
Oh,
Uh,
I see.
all
Well,
I know is my property tax has been going up, and I think it's to pay for all her prisons because like she claims to be a Republican, but she seems to like slaves like a Democrat does. I don't
s
know.
somebody's accusing one of us, depending on which one it is, on the left screen, David Lee Roth. I don't know who that is, but it sounds like a British name, which is, the colonial powers that we fought off. Who is
I,
David
I
Lee
think
Roth?
I think someone's being accused of being a boomer. Is what I think.
So is that you or me? Has David Lee Roth got a beard?
Um, well, I'm a little bit hefty, so I think it might be you.
I have no idea who that man is. Probably because he's some degenerate of some sort.
Roth makes him sound Jewish.
Oh well, he's probably in the
Maybe
war then.
he's one of those Rothschilds I keep hearing about.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Rothschild. It makes sense. I could see that. Yeah. I see that. Was that a rebel flag on your beer there? Because I don't have that
I
beer.
wish it was. This is a good American beer, Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's about as
Huh.
cheap as it gets.
Okay. Still not as cheap as Bud Light, though.
No, no. So far as I know, Pabst Blue Ribbon only believes that there's two genders. So
It's not genders, it's sex. I'm getting tired of having to educate you on this matter, sir. Gender is that thing used by those foreign people that speak that fancy language where they got like female tables and male cats and what have you. That's to do with language. It's nothing to do with biology.
well, you'll have to
J.
forgive me.
Oh, J.
I'm steeped.
Blakemore.
I'm steeped in the American uh,
You mean in the
heresies.
communist agenda, not American? I mean, God, sir, it's been too long. I need to get you back on track.
Yeah,
Jake Blakemore says,
I need you to keep me straight, Jebediah. Keep me straight, brother.
Howdy from Dixie from J. Blakemore. That's a nice,
Yeehaw.
solid American name.
Sounds kind of like Lovemore.
Well, yeah, I don't know. He says PBR. I don't know what that means.
That's that
Peace be.
PBR.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, Pat Blue Ribbon. Well, he seems to like it, so it must be good. He's got a nice, solid southern name.
Yeah. Yep.
Kurgan with the jungle hat and the glasses. Well, I don't know who that Kurgan fellow is. Jebediah Lovemore, as I've told you people. It's been a while, but surely you haven't forgotten. Nice, solid southern name like that. And yes, I kind of like this hat. I gotta admit. I mean, it's, obviously it's not an American hat, which is better. It's like one of them cheese-eating surrender
You know,
type
we
people.
wouldn't be called rednecks if we all wore hats like that. Keeps the sun off the back of your neck.
Uh, well, I'm a southern gentleman, so I'm not a redneck. I mean, I'm an educated southern gentleman.
Right.
Slightly different from. I have nothing against our brethren, of course, from the hills, but I actually went to school. I learned all about the range and the distance and the wind pull, so that you can make a shot out over a mile or so with the right equipment, of course. I mean, that's the education that we all achieved, for the conflicts that we get thrown into. Now we have somebody called Underbear in the chat. And Stinky Peterson. I just wish the man would take a shower. I don't know why he's got that name. It's just,
Must be a Yankee.
at that we have Yankees, what is the world coming to? But anyway, let you go on and tell us what happened there. She like banned guns and human beings or something. Your governor there in Alabama. I mean, it's
I don't recall anything like that here recently. I know New Mexico they tried to ban guns,
oh,
but
was that where it was?
out west, at least New Mexico, they may as well be Yankees themselves. So,
Oh, I thought it was Alabama. Oh, that's good. I feel better. I thought.
brother,
I th-
we would not allow that in
yeah,
Alabama. Now
that.
they're taking down our statues and our heritage,
Oh, that's
but they ain't
terrible.
touching our guns. Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
Although down in Birmingham they've got a pagan god on the top of their mountain. I don't know if you know about that.
No, I don't, sir. Please elaborate.
It's the Vulcan.
What, like from
It's
Mr. Spock?
yeah. It's the
What?
god of fire, including fire from the volcanoes, and it's
Oh,
Roman myth.
the Greek that became the Roman, because the Romans stole them from the Greeks, and I think the Greeks probably stole them from the Egyptians. But yeah,
Yeah,
what
they
was
were.
his name? I know the fella, the one who kidnapped the pretty girl and made her his wife, because rape was the way they did things back then.
Rape used to be how you said hello in the world.
Yeah, especially in Greece
Oh
and
yeah.
Rome.
I'm
You
just
know,
surprised he stole him a little lady. They're renowned for their
was it
homosexuality.
is it Hephaestus, something like that? I
I
can't
think so.
remember.
Yeah, that's it. Romans, I on Infogalactic says the Romans identified Vulcan with the Greek smith god Hephaestus.
There we go. See, I told you I'd read some books.
Yeah, that's good, man. I ain't read that book.
Uh, uh,
Hey,
Underbear
that's a
says
big
that.
roll tide there to Jay Blakemore. I'm not an Auburn man myself, but this is my wife's hat, and I couldn't find my Marine Corps hat that I wore last time, so
Oh well, as long as you got a hat, means
gotta
you're
have a hat. If you ain't got
yeah.
a hat, you ain't got nothing.
It's yeah, or a gun. I mean, you gotta have guns. Underbear
Yeah,
says that women governors are a curse. Well, yeah, we all know that, sir. Thanks for spelling out that water's wet, but yeah, yeah. Oh, now on to another very important thing. I've been on a. I have to confess, as you know, unlike yourself, I'm of the papist persuasion, and therefore I have to confess to my priest that some soon, next Sunday probably, that I still don't own a bona fide, God-given Colt 1911, and it's been troubling me. It's one of those sinful things that you carry around and you just don't tell your friends about. But I sorely need a Colt 1911. I've been doing some research, and I mean, every American man should have a Colt 1911, surely, and certainly anyone
absolutely,
from the South.
absolutely. That's a fine gun, and I'm gonna tell you about the first time I fired one. I messed up real bad.
Oh,
I was down down in South Alabama, um, spending some time with one of them Florida men you read about in the news, and I was shooting my Makarov. I have a Russian Makarov that I like to carry, and he pulled out a 1911, and I said, "Well, I ain't never shot one of them before." So he handed it to me, and I sized it up, felt it, felt good. Feels real good in the hand. So
does, doesn't
I,
it?
I pointed it down range and fired one round off. Man, it was dead center, dead center.
That's beautiful.
And then my stupid self tried to take another shot, and I didn't get it. Didn't even hit the target. So I should have stuck with the one shot and said, "My work here is done."
Well,
But
I mean, if it had been an intruder, that's all you'd needed to do. So
yeah, you're right. You're right. So
it worked. It was fine.
with
Jake,
all that, with that 45 round, I mean, you don't need more than one good shot. But I
well,
am, I am,
I got a story about my pappy, who
okay.
is he's an ordinary old man, and he was well, I'm not going to go through the whole story. Let's just say that he was in a shop, uh, performing his duties as a somebody that the shop hired his firm to like look after them in case of criminality and that sort of thing. And so these guys came in with some guns, and my good old man like basically put two 45s into one of these guys, but he ran off, and yeah, he wasn't left there like a dead body, and he couldn't get to the bottom really of what happened to the guy, whether he died, whether he went to a hospital, whether he got away.
Hmm.
But it was out in the way out back of the outback sticks, and he probably crawled under some rock and passed away, I would guess, because 2 rounds from a 45 and walking off. And he definitely hit the guy because there's a lot of blood and stuff. So I don't know. You know, guns are funny things. You just got to make sure the guy stays down. Yeah. 1911, a nice antique. That's Underbear, swearing there, like using the Lord's name in vain, I think.
I don't appreciate that
Kind of
using those
tone.
three words in the
Yeah,
same sentence.
yeah, yeah. Stinky Peterson says, let's hear it from a Southern. Is Kentucky a Southern state? I believe
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah,
Yeah. Kentucky's. I mean, that's where Kentucky bourbon comes from. We ain't gonna let the Yankees have Kentucky bourbon, are we?
No, and also, isn't there some black powder rifles from Kentucky? I
Oh
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. And horses. We got the Kentucky Derby. That's about as American an institution as you get.
indeed. Although, when we speak about America these days, one wonders what we mean exactly.
That's a
I
good question.
think we should define it back into Yankee land, Rebel land, and I don't know what are those guys on the East Coast like fans? What's that word? Poncy? What do the British people say for fancy pants type people? Yeah,
Ponce.
maybe I don't know. Oh, Sam Werb just sent us $1.92.
Woo.
So yeah, it's a strange number, but we'll put that to the Colt 1911 fund.
He was rounding up the 1911 to just 192.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
of course. Oh,
that's a nice little donation. Yeah,
yeah,
posh. That's the word.
I'm half asleep here. I didn't understand that. Stinky Peterson says that it's a matter of fierce debate in some circles whether Kentucky is a southern state. I mean, what circles do you hang around in, sir? Posh
Mm.
circles, like up there in the East Coast, where they're all like confused about their sexuality and I don't know. Yes, Sam Werb confirms 192 for the 1911 fund is the balance of my Google Rewards account. Thank you, sir. Thank you kindly. I think
Well,
that might buy a round, possibly.
and I have to say, Jebediah, I am ashamed that you don't have one.
I
That
confess it.
bothers me.
I am ashamed myself. It's a secret I've been hiding for a long time, and I need to make right. I can't deny it.
Well, I've got a couple of stories about a couple of guns if you're interested in hearing about it.
Well, when is a Southern man not interested in a story about guns? Of course, I'm interested.
I don't know. So the
Underbear
Makarov
has.
that I
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
Underbear has got an ignorant question. Kentucky was part of the Confederacy. That's a question from the man. Hey, I'll let you take that one. I don't know what to say to the man.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it was a very important border state. They did try to declare their neutrality at the beginning of the war, but
It's the
they
smart
can't.
move, right?
Yeah, that's a damn fine strategic move. Nobody knew the way the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Got some
yeah,
Italian friends who are really up on that.
they couldn't. They couldn't risk that bourbon. They had to play it smart.
Yeah.
If everybody wanted some whiskey, then Kentucky had to remain. So, I mean, we know
Indeed.
that the barbarians from the north came down south and burned everything. So I mean, it was a smart move. We're not gonna have a manhood swinging contest. We just know they fought with us by the
Yeah.
end.
Hey, that's all that matters. Who did you pull a trigger for? That's it. But yes, sorry to interrupt. Go on with your gun story, sir.
So that Makarov I mentioned, we it's a very special gun. I've got it right here. This is
That is a
it's
fine,
actually a
fine
it's
communist
actually a
piece.
Russian Makarov, so it ain't
Uh,
one of those
the, the,
imposters.
the back sights, is that new or is that something that came with the original?
Oh, I don't know. That's how it came when I got it, and
Right.
I bought this from a very dear friend of mine, and
Hmm.
something about this Makarov in particular. this could be considered, and I don't know about if your community here knows or patronized, but this was the founding firearm of crypto fashion. When I
Oh,
purchased this,
I
when I
didn't. No, I
purchased
didn't.
this, the money, the money that Ian McLeod made from this gun went directly to the incorporation funds that started crypto fashion. So that's it's a very special piece of alt tech history, as far
That's
as I'm concerned.
very cool. So how?
Yeah,
Wait, you said the money he made from that gun? What? Who did he
yeah.
shoot with it?
When I purchased this gun from him,
Oh,
he
right.
told me that
Oh, I see.
he was using it to pay for the incorporation funds for crypto fashion.
So yeah, that is very interesting because you've made an essentially Southern corporation using money from the purchase of a communist weapon. That is beautiful. That is.
And
I don't think we
that's
can top that story.
well, I believe we can, but well, not that story. The story itself is good, but in my shame
Yeah.
over you,
Yes.
um, I actually have a treasured possession of my own now.
Oh. Oh yes.
That's that's a
Oh,
military issue
I see that.
Springfield 1911.
That's the A1 version. Oh, it's got the US stamp on. Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt this
I
gun
can
goes
tell
in
from the slightly beveled trigger. Going towards the trigger, there's a slight bevel there. So that's the A1 version. So that's the one that was made after 1924. Or well, replica of, or
yeah.
very very nice. I am actually trying to get a World War One version with the straight back. I think that one has got like a little rounded bit on
It does. It does.
the back strap there.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
show the poor people that don't know and don't own one of them. See the back strap there where his index finger is. It's got like a little rounded part of it. Yeah, and I think the original was straight there, was straight back there, and didn't have the little bevel by the trigger there. And
I believe
the trigger was a bit longer on the World War One version, which they did up until 1924.
that's right.
So I'm actually
Now
looking for.
the only thing that throws me about this is that uh,
Oh yeah,
safety.
I am no good with them. I'm no good with those. If I've managed to find one, I may have to pin that. I don't know. I'll have to see how it works.
But that 1911 right there was Ian McLeod's uh, personal 1911. That was his carry gun when he carried. God rest him. We lost Ian back in May.
Yes, I'm aware. I'm sure he's in a better place now.
Absolutely. But I'm honored to have to have his couple of his firearms.
That is indeed is that's a good thing. It stays in the family. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Sam says, I like the looks of the Tokarev T-33. Have either of you shot one? I have shot a Colt 1911 before, or a version of Colt 1911. I really like them. I like the way it holds. I quite like the way it shoots. I just never bought one because well, as you know, as a traveling gunfighter, I worked with a gun for quite some time, and of course you want to have a six gun if you're a good Southern gentleman. But you know, I just thought I should have one now. I don't do that work anymore, but it's well, what are you going to do? Not have a Colt 1911? That's just not an option, is it? So I have to find a way to get one.
When it comes down to it, there are two types of people in the world: those with a Colt 1911 and those without a Colt 1911.
That absolute amen. Yep, that's
And those without, with respect to you, my friend, are not people I want to associate with.
well, I understand how you.
I know you're repenting and you're making it right, but
Yeah,
hopefully we can make that right sooner than later.
it is a shameful situation. I've put a link. I put a link for people who want to help redeem me in this issue.
I had a little bit of trepidation even coming on your stream knowing that, but
Oh,
once you know. But you know,
I understand. You know, that's the good thing about being a good friend. You can tell your good friend that he is just scum because he doesn't have a Colt 1911, and he just has to take it because it's true. That's just how it is.
you'll make it. You'll get there. Promise.
I have to, you know. Plus, with all what's going on in Ukraine and Israel and the rest of the world, and the potential for civil war in our United States of America, I think it is incumbent upon any man to have a Colt 1911. It's just, why wouldn't you have? Stinky Peterson says, what's y'all's favorite brand of chewing tobacco? I don't touch the stuff, sir. No. We are,
That's a misconception. Southern people
yeah,
don't necessarily have to chew tobacco. It's a filthy habit.
it is a
We
disgusting habit.
we prefer to smoke it in a pipe or a cigar, or on
Yeah.
very rare drinking occasions in a cigarette. But
Yeah, I mean that
chew,
you have to be real drunk to use a cigarette. I mean, a cigar or a pipe is understandable, but you know, a cigarette is kind of an effeminate
speaking of
sort of a.
cigars, I was gifted this
Ah,
some kind of Cuban cigar the other day. I'm
ah,
gonna
that's
smoke a
beautiful.
dirty communist cigar, but we'll see.
Oh,
See how it is.
those are the best cigars to smoke because you can feel you're burning communism even as you enjoy it. Underbear says all men should be familiar with all pistols and manual or arms if possible. Manual or arms? I don't know what that means, but anyway. I've recently
Wells arms like Mexicans.
manual. Oh, I don't know. What you mean, like machetes and stuff, or I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, the thing is, I put it on my blog, my friend's blog rather. You know that Italian guy. Anyway, and I saw this documentary on the YouTubes in black and white for, I think it was pre or during sort of World War II, about the use of the 1911, and I was actually very impressed. Now, you're going to get all those Yankees with them plastic guns that are going to say, oh, that is outdated, and you know how they talk. They don't know anything. But the thing is, in this documentary, you can see what the men are shooting because they're using tracer ammunition, and they're not doing half bad when you consider that most of these guys, or a good percentage of them anyway, had never even held a firearm in their hand before, and I was pretty impressed by the way they were training them, because these poor guys were getting to shoot about one magazine's worth at a target out at, I think it was 25 yards for the first time ever. They get like one magazine at that, and then they get like 4 shots 3 times, one at like 50 meters from the prone position, or 50 yards from the prone position. Let's not use communist units of measure, pardon me. So from 50 yards in the prone position, they get 2 shots at a target that, one of them pop-up target things, and two shots at that, 2 shots at the other one. Then they get to do the same thing in a kneeling position at 25 yards, and then they get to do the same in like a built-up sort of fake little, I think they called it Berlin, a little mini Berlin, because that's where they were going, to liberate Europe. And that's at 15 yards in this sort of little setup scenario where like some Nazi or German guy or whatever pops out of a window or something, and they do another 2 shots that, 2 shots that. Now, considering these guys have basically fired 7 shots in their whole life, and then they do 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 for a grand total of under 20 rounds, what they were teaching them at point shooting, I was impressed with the results these guys were getting, because a 50-yard shot with a 1911 made back then, made in the 1940s and 1930s or something, they're not like the 1911s that are made now. I mean, even your 1911 there is a very, very good replica of the Second World War version. but it's got modern parts. It's probably got a better trigger. It's probably got, you know, more smooth moving things. These guys were pretty much on target most of the time, and they were doing point shooting for the most part. They weren't doing, like, you know, sit and aim. And one of the very interesting things about it is that the instructor was telling them to hold their arm rigid, so their wrist and their elbow locked, and then they would point using the whole shoulder and body movement to point. But they made them understand that the lineup of the Colt needed to be straight up, straight through the wrist, straight up the arm. And if you held it angled, you know, if there was a slight angle between, let me see, if there was a slight angle between where the gun was pointing, this way or that way, you would miss. You wouldn't be able to stay on target. While if the thing was 100% centered along the same line as your wrist and your arm, then it was naturally pointing pretty much where you're pointing. And given these guys had, you know, a whole grand total of maybe half hour of instruction, I think that was really quite effective, and I think I'm going to try that next time at the range, just to see what kind of accuracy I can get. Because as you can see, I crushed my rimless glasses, which I was working on the roof, and I stepped on them like an idiot. So now I'm wearing these. I know, it's like your wife's hat sort of thing, you know. Yeah.
I was wondering why you were wearing lady glasses.
Well, what can I say?
That's part of your penance for that.
You took the words out of my mouth, sir. I was just going to say it's penance for my sins. But anyway, I'm going to try that because my eyesight, whatever, everything has gone a little bit, you know, south. And
I've never understood that expression. When things go south, they usually get better.
that is a good point. But while my shall we say, mental acuity gets better, some parts of your body let you down a little bit now. And I've been to the range recently. Mind you, I was setting the firearm because out of, you know, it wasn't set correct, and I didn't have the proper tools. Because another sinful omission on my part, for whatever reason, I left the house forgetting to put a knife in my pocket, and I know. One wonders how many rosaries I'm going to have to do just to get back into the Lord's good graces. It's just something horrible. So I didn't have my knife and I did bring some screwdriver tools, like, you know, tiny screwdriving tools, but they're not narrow enough to get into the little screw that, you know, adjusts the back sights. So I wasn't happy with myself, put it that way, and I was doing all right at 15 yards, but not, you know, not what I should have done. I mean, at 15 yards, a good 20 years ago or so, I would pretty much chew up the same hole. I wasn't doing that, so I wasn't happy with that. But hopefully I can improve that the next time I go around, and I will definitely bring my knife and a better set of screwdrivers as well.
That story about the way they held those 1911s is really interesting, because I've always noticed when people are shooting those, they have their arms stretched straight out. And I always thought, man, that ain't the right form. But now that makes a lot of sense.
Well, the thing is, if you're shooting one-handed, that is the right form. Because back in the day, like with another one of my favorite weapons, which I don't own, but I do own a Colt Dragoon third version. So I have some redeeming qualities there. But the other firearm I like is the Colt Navy 1851, which is a black powder weapon. And then there are, you know, modernized versions that'll shoot a 38 special. But those things, they used to shoot, the qualifications for that back in the day was like, you know, one-armed, stretched out to the side, and you would just shoot that way, one-handed. And I'm just gonna play around, so I'm gonna do that too.
That's really good. I'm gonna try that too next time I go out.
Yeah. So what do we got? We got some more comments here. Underbear says, Manual of Arms, procedure to operate and clear jams. Oh, yeah, that's just called Tuesday. And also, if you keep your gun properly, it shouldn't really jam. Although I have to say, when I did shoot the Colt 1911 before, I had a problem with that grip safety because,
Hmm.
you know, being slightly older than you are, I tend to favor shall we say, the six-gun Colt version of the firearms. And as you well know, if you're shooting them quick and you're shooting them properly and you know what you're doing, you kind of hold those kind of loose. I mean, I have to have that a little bit loose to just let it float about, and then when it's right in the spot, it's kind of a natural movement. I do that with the Colt 1911, and grip safety is not being gripped, so I you know,
It
that
just
was
and
an
then it
issue.
takes all the wind out of your sails because you're ready to go. You're ready to take that shot, and then it doesn't go off, and you're like,
I
"What the
know,
heck's going on?"
I know. Now, the other
And
thing
you need that dang grip safety.
that concerns me a little bit is that the proper way to carry a Colt 1911 is cocked and locked, and I gotta say that makes me a little bit nervous. That does make me a little bit nervous. Now I know it's got the thumb safety and it's got the grip safety. I know it's got both of them, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, confession time. I I would be, I ain't perfectly coordinated myself, so
Hmm.
I don't want, you don't get that many rounds in the magazine, and I sure don't want to waste one into my leg trying to pull
Yeah,
the thing out.
spoil your
So
whole day shooting yourself in the
I,
foot.
yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I understand being ready at a moment's notice, but you also got to know yourself, and if you
Yeah,
know you might fumble that, you don't do it.
it's not just the fumbling that worries me. It's that, like, you usually would be carrying that in the back of your, unless you're carrying it military carry. But even then, you sit down, you drive a car, you're doing something, that thumb safety could go off.
Hmm.
And then you grabbing the grip safety properly because you trained yourself to make sure you grab that grip safety. And then, it's, you just touch that trigger a little bit wrong and off it
Hmm.
goes. And you don't want a 45 caliber size hole in your butt cheek.
No, no.
That would make a double asshole out of you in more ways than one. So yeah, I'm a bit nervous about that. But the thing is, I think the old versions, if you carried it one up and with the thumb with the hammer down, then again, that's kind of dangerous because they're the kind of guns that if you get, you know, dropped or if it gets hit or something on the hammer when the hammer's down, I think they go off, those ones. The modern ones
Now,
probably don't,
I'm
but
a little disturbed that you said something. You said something about dangerous. I ain't never heard nothing about guns being dangerous. Where'd you hear that from?
no, you know what I mean. I mean, if you drop it, it's like,
Oh,
no, gun is not dangerous. I mean, if you're uncoordinated or or whatever, you get hit by a
well,
hammer in the wrong place.
I just think if guns were dangerous, we would have heard something about it by
No, no, of course guns are not dangerous. Guns are
now. Okay,
perfectly,
all right. All right.
some people
Thank you for
are,
clearing that up.
some people need killing, but even then you don't really think of guns as being dangerous. That's just wrong. What do we got here? Stinky Peterson, who should be the first president of the new Confederate States of America?
Hmm.
That's a good question. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be, and I don't think you
I
want to
think
be.
I'd vote for just as a big thumb of the nose to the old America. I'd have Elon Musk.
Well, he's a South African though,
Well,
and
that's South.
yeah, but doesn't he serve like the Yankees? I mean, isn't he like
I don't
all
know,
caught
man. He's
up in
been
all
doing
that?
pretty. I think it would trigger so many people that it would be worth whatever trepidation we have over it. It would just be funny to watch people melt down over it.
I think perhaps I don't know who, but I think personally a black gentleman should be the first president of
Oh,
the Southern State. That would really melt
oh,
their brains.
you said a black?
A black gentleman, yeah, a black
Why
Southern
do you say
gentleman,
that?
because that would just melt the brains of all the Yankees. They wouldn't be able
Oh
to know
yeah,
what to do with that.
that's right.
Preferably, a black man that owns a cotton plantation. That's who I'd like to be, the first president of the southern United States. I think that would be Confederate States. Pardon me. Not United, Confederate.
Lovemore says Ted Nugent. That's a pretty good idea.
Oh, he's like a politician, isn't he? I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
Ted
try.
Nugent. He's a musician and a crossbow hunter, and he's a true son of the South.
But isn't he also a politician?
No, no, not
He's
Ted
not.
Nugent.
Oh, maybe I'm confusing him with somebody else. I just don't trust anybody who actually wanted to be a politician. That
Yeah,
you've got to
that's
disqualify those guys.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Stinky Peterson says hats off to Alvin York. And yeah, I've been reading up all about Alvin York, and I had read some Yankee publication, no doubt, long ago, that some, I don't know, he must have been some New Yorker or something, probably some guy from Washington, D.C., had written an article years ago that was basically saying that Alvin York wasn't quite what everybody thought he was cut out to be. Well, what a load of rubbish. I've been doing a lot of reading on Mr. Sergeant York. I mean, he was a corporal, actually, when he did the thing that earned him the Medal of Honor. But yeah, no, Sergeant York absolutely did what he said he did. I have no doubt about it. And there's a gentleman that went through all the trouble of going precisely to the area in France where, where he shot those German guys and took, basically led his men after, I think it was the sergeants that were in charge, got wounded or killed. And he basically took over, and they they successfully went around and got rid of 2 machine gun nests, and Corporal York with his 7 other men, I believe, they came back to the American lines with 132 surrendered Germans, and they had taken out 2 machine gun positions, and Alvin York had. Because when the shooting started, they were pretty close to the machine gun post, and he had like just jumped down, like lay down prone a few meters away from his German counterpart, and the German machine gunners couldn't get to him without standing up to angle the machine gun further down, and whenever they did stand up, he'd pop off one of their heads, because Mr. York was a good shot with a rifle and a pistol. So eventually one of the German officers said, okay, enough of this, and they got bayonets on, and they charged him with bayonets. And it's very interesting what Corporal York said about it, because people said, oh, he just stood there and blazed away with his Colt 1911, and he dropped like 6 Germans or whatever, because he started out from the back one so that they wouldn't notice to the front one. But he explained why that was, and it wasn't like he was just being gung-ho and wanted to get every one of them. He says, I started shooting them from the back one because I was scared that if I shot the first one and the other guys realized what was happening, they would stop and they would just give me a volley of bullets instead of charging me with a bayonet. So he started taking them out one at a time. Eventually, the German officer said, look, if you just stop shooting, I'll tell my men to surrender. So he did, and they did. He said, except for one guy. This guy wouldn't stop. He kept shooting at me, and I told him to stop a couple of times, and then I had to pop him off because he just wouldn't stop. So now, here's the interesting thing about Alvin York. Right in the aftermath, nobody knew much about it, but later on, he became an American hero. He got the Medal of Honor. Very humble man from humble origins. He went back, he got offered the equivalent of like millions of dollars to do films and stuff. There was a film made about him, I think, with Gary Cooper in it, and he got some money out of that, but he gave most of it away to charity. And he was born in like the mountains of, I can't remember which state he was from, but he was born in some little two-room cabin. His father, Tennessee, there you go. And he went back to, his daddy died quite early on. He went back to live with his mom, and he married the girl that he wanted to marry. He went back there and he married her. And he had quite an unfortunate life after that. He gave most of his money away. He tried to re-enlist for World War II, but he was 54 at the time, and he had some health problems already. And then he got kind of a stroke, and he was kind of bedridden. And what does the American Yankee government of the Inland Revenue Service do? They go after him for about $172,000, which was a hell of a lot more than he ever got out of the film stuff, which he'd given away anyway. And it was like the equivalent of millions of dollars. The man didn't have anything, and he was like, and he was the kind of man who was proud, and he was like, I don't want to, I don't want to owe any money. That's just, I can take all sorts of hardship, but this is just too much. And he was kind of helped by, people that they heard about this, and they were like, that just ain't right. And so they put some money together to pay off the IRS. But how's that? Can you imagine a man who did that, and then the government goes after him for a ridiculous amount of tax money that he couldn't have paid when he got the money from the film thing. It was just absolutely disgusting, and he died shortly after.
That makes me think of the bonus army after World War One, when World War One veterans marched on Washington because they reneged on the bonuses that they were promised,
I didn't know about that. Tell us that story, sir.
You gotta look that up, man. I only just learned about it recently, but it was several thousand World War One veterans marched on Washington D.C. I mean, it made January 6th look like what January 6th actually was.
Was supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah, right. And they marched, and man, it was a PR nightmare for Washington because they had to dispatch the military police and push these veterans out, and they even set a fire on their encampments and drove them out of their places and sent them back over the Potomac, and it was, I mean, it was just a mess.
So
Eventually,
and they never got their money.
I don't think so, but their efforts ended up being what the GI Bill is that takes care of veterans now. But I mean, you're talking about World War One, man. These guys saw hell.
I tell you,
And the
man,
government,
every politician should just be lined up and shot for my money. They're just parasites, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm looking at who was one of the commenters might be able to weigh in on this, but it was Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, and Herbert Hoover were the ones who drove them out of Washington.
George Patton,
Hmm.
the general guy,
Hmm.
the guy that got into World War II.
Yeah.
That same guy.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't feel so bad. He got assassinated now.
Douglas MacArthur ordered General Perry Miles to assemble troops on the ellipse immediately south of the White House. Within the hour, the 3rd Cavalry, led by George Patton, then a major, crossed the Memorial Bridge with the 12th Infantry, arriving by steamer about an hour later. And they just drove these guys out. They were protesting because they were promised something.
Well, yeah.
Sort of like Waco.
Well, yeah. I mean, George Patton. I didn't know that about him. All I knew about him was he was killed after the Second World War because he was saying some unpolitic things. I don't feel so bad about it now.
You ought to read about that, man. I hadn't heard anything about it.
Oh, well, of course you wouldn't have, because it makes them look bad, don't it? So they're going to squash it and hide it. I am reminded of that.
Yes, Herbert Hoover was the president at the time.
Yeah, well, Hoover. I'm reminded of that comic guy who died recently. What was his name?
No.
That would. Well, it's on the tip of my tongue. It might come back. Anyway, it was funny. I remember one little clip that he had where he had this big book, and he goes, "Oh, will you just look at that? That's isn't that just great? It says right here in this history book that the good guys won every war. What are the chances of that? Isn't that great? The good guys always won the wars, every war. All the good guys win." That was quite something. I enjoyed that. Norman, what was Norman something? The comic guy, Norman something. There's a pretty
Oh,
famous.
Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald.
There we go. That's the man.
I thought you was talking about comic books, but
No,
you're
no, a
talking about
comic, like a person, a stand-up comic. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, let's see now. What do we got? Sam Werb says, my dad owned a 1911 when I was a kid. The man who sold it to him shot left-handed, and a hot ejected brass would often hit him in the face. It would, yeah. that's that's quite funny, unless you're the left-handed man.
I had some hot brass land in my chest pocket and it burned me
uh,
real bad. It was fun.
I think my wife had one land right in between her breasts, and it ended up giving her
Hot
a little,
tomato.
a little burn mark on her belly because it went straight down, and she was like jumping around a little bit. So yeah. And the bear says, yeah, they used to teach that one-handed John Wayne aiming. They did not know better. You know, there's a time and place for everything. And there's a time and place where you might just want to have to shoot one-handed or need to shoot one-handed.
Yeah, like if you need to look real cool when you're killing somebody.
Well, maybe you're just doing something else with your other hand, pushing someone out the way or holding something or,
As long as you ain't like this.
yeah. No, I used to work with a guy that when that first came out in the movies, like all these gangbangers holding a gun on their side like that, and
Mm-hmm.
he tried to tell me, no, I was like, man, what a load of shit, it's nonsense. And he was like, no, that your arm recoils better. I'm like, and tell me, all the like hot brass coming out of your gun hitting you right in the forehead, I think that would be a little bit distracting, but what are you going to do? Dumb people
You
are
know,
dumb.
Jebediah, there is some melanin enriched science behind that because if you if you jerk the gun forward like they do,
Yeah.
it fires that bullet out faster, makes it more accurate.
Well, you say that, but did you see that film with Banderas in it? That guy from the southern parts of the American continent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, he's Spanish or something. I don't know. Anyway, the one of the first films he made with the El Mariachi film with that
Oh
other
yeah.
Spanish woman or
Mm-hmm.
Mexican woman that's got the same kind of things like the Italian president called Melons. Anyway, she there's a scene in there where he's actually shooting two Rugers. I think they're like double stacked Rugers in 45, and he's kind of like flicking them like that. Now, it's not a shooting style that you want to be doing, but I could see, because I have that loose-handed way of shooting, I could see that in some weird situation, like he was running on top of a like bars, some Hollywood thing, wasn't realistic at all. But it was kind of like I could kind of see that because it kind of gives you a bit of it's almost like a whip. And if you time it just right, the whip, you can be real precise with the whip, and I can see that working.
There was that other movie. I think it was called Salt. I think it was Angelina Jolie or
Oh
something
yeah,
like
with
that.
the
She took that gun
curveball.
and she flung it and spun the bullet so it
Yeah.
curved.
Yeah, no, that was something else. That's not quite. Yeah. Jake Blakemore says, my pit bull Patton would make a great politician. I'm sure he would. The bitter drool added. Uh,
How many toddlers does Pat need every morning?
I don't know, but he's saying no. But he was born in Michigan, so Kid Rock for VP.
Oh, Kid Rock. Yeah, that's a good one. But
Yeah.
he drinks Bud Light. He even drank. He was railing against Bud Light during the Dylan Mulvaney thing, and then he was caught drinking one right after.
You just can't trust artistic people or politicians, can you?
Bud Light ain't even good enough to cheat on your morals with.
Well, I've been in shops, where they actually are sold out of everything else, and they've made it cheaper than water, and it's like
Hmm
the Bud Light sitting there. It's just I think, and there's another beer that's made by the same company that's not called Bud Light, but no one's buying that one either. They're getting wise to the point that that same company. So,
Yeah.
Underbear says George Carlin, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Ah, well, I'm used to that. We're used to that being Southern. Norm MacDonald, that's what you get for being wrong-handed. Hot brass down your shirt. I know my wife's not left-handed. It's just the way I think it bounced off the side of the range thing wall. Desperado. Oh yeah, was it called Desperado or El Mariachi? Yeah, it was the Hollywood version of El Mariachi, which was El Mariachi was the yeah, that's right. Jake Blakemore says enough. Enough.
That's about my toddler comment.
Or yeah, your what comment?
I asked how many toddlers his pit bull had to eat for breakfast every day.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Enough, he says. Yeah, no, I don't like pit bulls. Another story from my old man. He had a pit bull, and then he growled at my half brother, and so the pit bull got a 45 size hole in his head.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now he owns, I think, a couple of 45s. I don't think any of them are Colt 1911s. They're Ruger. Maybe one's a Colt Smith & Wesson something. I don't know, maybe. But he tends to go for quantity over quality. You know, I'm not really into that. I had a little bit of a conversation with us on Social Galactic, which I mean, I don't like that name. I mean, what are we supposed to be social with a whole galaxy? It's not good, you know. It's just wrong. I mean, you know, you want
globalism not good enough?
I mean, yeah, you want little green men on Mars, stay on Mars. You know, little ass humans stay on Earth, that sort of thing. But anyway, in the Social Galactic social thing, whatever, there was this guy who fancied himself like a LEO instructor, and you know, like, yeah, I've been an LEO, I've carried concealed on airplanes, and you can't tell me nothing. And there was a gentleman that was asking about something by Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E, that they make these kind of plastic guns that shoot like kind of like paintball balls, but they shoot like pepper spray and some ceramic balls. You know, they're like non-lethal weapons basically. And he was saying, oh, does anybody know anything about these? Because as a woman in my family or a friend of his or whatever that doesn't want to carry a proper handgun, so I'm looking at this. And I was like, wait, you live in the United States of America. Like, why would you get a non-lethal weapon when you can just buy whatever gun you want? I don't understand. And so this other guy chimed in and goes, well, she don't want to carry a gun. She should definitely carry a knife. Now, one understands even a Southern belle can be a little bit skittish, you know, if she's not raised right, about shooting a man in the face with a big gun. Because it's messy and you get blood on your dress, and, you know, then, you know, it's just your girlfriends are going to be all upset, and it's going to do you probably cry, run your mascara. It's messy stuff. You don't want to be doing, you know, shooting people in the face. Of course, the correct thing is, you know, for a woman getting, you know, aggrieved by some, you know, one of these people that's not being raised right, the correct thing should happen is that, you know, the gentleman steps in and does the needed thing to do and says, don't worry, darling, it's all taken care of, and carry on with your shopping while I clean up. That's kind of how it should be. But, you know, if she is on her own, then, and she's the kind of woman that doesn't, you know, gets a little bit skittish about shooting someone with a firearm, what are the chances that she's going to hack away at him with a knife?
Oh, yeah. I was about to ask that same thing. Like, if you're scared of a gun, you ain't got the stones to use a knife.
Absolutely not. So what's going to happen is that aggressive person is now also going to have a knife out of her. It's absolutely idiotic. And this cretinous fool was going on about how I have done this and I have done that. And you're an old man. And I'm like, oh, he's a millennial. So I know you're one yourself, but you know, you were raised in the South properly. And then he kept posting pictures of, I assume, himself with some firearm. That's like you know, some semi-auto type thing or a fully auto like little machine. And I'm like, how does that relate to anything like concealed carry or women? I've trained women and I've trained. I'm like, listen here, you imbecile. I have trained law enforcement officers like yourself. And I've trained female law enforcement officers, kind of like himself. And they actually have results because even this female officer that I trained, she made arrests that her male officers couldn't and wouldn't do. And she did them by herself because she got taught how to actually hit effectively and how to, you know, do the certain things that needed doing. So
We got a name for non-lethal guns in the United States, especially in the South. We
yeah,
call them toys.
well, yeah, of course, that's exactly right. I mean, I don't know. It's just, you know, carry a gun or don't carry a gun. Those are the options. There isn't a third option there as far as I see it.
That's right.
Yeah. So we got Jake Anderbear says, "Hey Kurgan, any plans to follow? I believe." Well,
I
I
don't know who he's
believe.
talking
Well, he's talking about my friend, but my friend
to.
wrote another book called "Reclaiming the Catholic Church." That should keep you going because it's a pretty thick book. Do I have one lying around? Maybe no. No, I don't have one lying around here, but yeah.
You ought to try
Yeah.
to get Castalia Library to sell some of those leather bound.
Well, you know, the thing is, good Mr. Beale is a Protestant, and I am a papist, and so I don't know whether he would go for that. But I do believe there are some books that are of the papist persuasion that he is potentially looking at, but I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'm not going to say anything. But yeah, Underbear, if you're interested in the Catholic Church stuff, go read up Reclaiming the Catholic Church. It's a nice thick book, and it'll tell you all about what happened to the real church, got infiltrated and corrupted and so on and so forth. But yeah, topic for another day. We're talking guns. I had a gentleman the other day on the stream asking my friend which rifle he should use for home defense. And I was like, wait, what? You know, I don't know what he meant to hunt with it. So I said, look, maybe a Winchester might be okay. But I mean, in my mind, if you're going to have a rifle, you should have something that shoots long distance. And if you have something that shoots long distance, it's going to have a scope on it. Now, admittedly, it's probably better to go after a guy in your house with a rifle with a scope on it than a golf club. I don't know. But yeah, it's sort of here or there, you know. But
Like that President Biden says, all you need for home defense is a shotgun. You just fire off a couple rounds in the air and you'll scare them away.
how's that incontinent old fool still standing up? Well, he doesn't stand up very well, does he? I mean, yeah.
He's like that. He's like that weekend at Bernie's. He's actually dead already. They just wheel him around. They got him some
I mean,
prosthetic legs.
the number of body doubles that guy has is something else. And Hillary. Hillary's got a number of. I mean, last time I saw Hillary, they would have physically picked her up body weight and threw her in the back of a van. That's the last time I actually saw her. After that, I don't know who they were wheeling out, but yeah.
Man, I just can't understand. Like I thought things were, people said the world was going to end in 2012, and I think they were right in a philosophical.
You might have hit the nail on the head there, sir.
Maybe that Mayan calendar ended and everybody just went crazy because it just seems like, man, I thought back then things were going crazy, but it ain't
Yeah.
nothing like this now.
No, no, you're quite right. Which also puts the lie to the rapture, though. You're going to start leaning papist yourself soon. The rapture didn't happen.
Yep, that's right. That's right. The whole rapture doctrine happened because a woman failed to be silent in the church. That's how the Millerites come to be. It was Plymouth Brethren. They were
Yeah, I'm not up to speed with all the heretics in your church. So yeah, go on, tell us.
They strung together all the different stuff that sounded vaguely end times related in the book of Revelation, and then applied it with some of the stuff in Matthew, and then come up with all this nonsense about a rapture and Armageddon and Harmageddon and all this stuff. And it was like a 13-year-old girl that put all these pieces together, looking like that meme of the guy with the strings going all over the place.
Well,
And
she,
that is where modern Protestant end times doctrine come from. Was a
well,
teenage girl that everybody stopped and listened to.
I
It's
guess
crazy.
she was the satanic version of Joan of Arc, then I suppose.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I have no understanding of people that like look at the Book of Revelation and try and claim something, anything about when the end times happen. I mean, it clearly states in there that not even Jesus knows the time,
Right.
only
Right.
only the Father. So why are you even bothering? I just don't get it.
Yeah. That's a
It's
waste of time.
an
You know,
absolutely futile exercise.
eschatology is one of those topics that it makes for good Christian science fiction, but to dwell on it just takes away the time that you should be doing trying to share
Yeah,
the.
I mean it's kind of like drunken talk, really, just useless. Sam Werb says, I understand your 1911 fixation. I am enamored with the Colt 1903 pocket hammerless. Many pistols are better, but that's the one I love. Hard to find. You know another pistol I really like? Because of a film I saw, mind you. I think it was a Danish film called Flamen and Lemon, or no, and Citron. Flamen and Citron. And it was loosely, I think, based on the true story of some Danish, I think it's Danish. I don't want to get it wrong, it might be Finnish, but no, I think it's Danish. Anyway, this Danish guy apparently, supposedly, had a girlfriend that might have been possibly of Jewish extraction, and she was killed by the Nazis. And this guy, he was early 20s, he was quite young, and apparently he had red hair. And he got a Browning 1901, I believe, which is an interesting gun because the barrel is actually below the like on your 1911 you got the hole the bullet comes out of on the top, and you got the
Mm-hmm.
whatever spring return thing at the bottom. Well, this was the other way around, and it's kind of a funny looking gun. And I saw it in that film, and I actually paused like frame by frame just so I could see the shape of it, and then I went to look, what is that? And it's a Browning 1901, which is I think, if I remember right, the 7.62 caliber or 7.65, like 32 ACP basically. Anyway, this guy assassinated a bunch of Nazi officers, and he was just flamboyant about it. He didn't try and hide or anything, and everybody knew he had red hair, and he just couldn't give a crap. He just came around like kept killing Nazis until they cornered him in a house, and he knew he was going to be like tortured to death basically. So I think it took a cyanide pill in the end. And him and his friend, their code names or whatever were called Flame and Lemon, because I don't know why the other guy was called Lemon, but he was called Flame because he had red hair. So yeah, it was an interesting pistol. You can get some of them. They're really, well, they're obviously well over 120 years old now, but they still work. And there are some. I looked at them, but I was like, you know what? That's just something I'd get if I have like real spare money to throw. I've kind of done I want that just because I like it, and that was the PPK, the James Bond gun. I got one of them just because I could. Saw it in a shop. It was kind of cheap, and it was like good, clean gun, and it shoots real well. I shoot real well. It's very accurate. So enjoy
Jebediah,
it.
you ever seen the Mateba auto revolver?
Oh yeah, I've seen
I
them.
love, I love those. I'd love to get me one of them.
They are
That's kind of like
expensive.
you're talking about the barrels on the bottom, like
Yeah,
you're talking
and
about.
it automatically cocks your next shot for the revolver, I
Mhm.
believe.
Man,
Yeah,
it's such a pretty gun.
I haven't shot it yet, but yeah, Chiappa also makes the Rhino, same sort of thing.
Hmm.
I think Chiappa makes a self-loading revolver type thing, but apparently, I don't know if it's true. They're quite finicky, and that self-loading aspect of it is quite interesting. Oh, Underbear says, thanks, Just Perkers reclaiming the Catholic Church. You're most welcome. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Sam Werb says, Patton carried two 1903s with ivory-handled scales. That's hypocrisy of the man, considering what we've just learned about the bonus veterans, and he ran them out of town, and now he's going around with two ivory-handled pistols that supposedly represent justice. I mean, that's just...
And then he, after World War II, he said that he feared we fought the wrong enemy, so he spent all the time in World War II fighting the wrong enemy because the communists were coming.
Yeah, and then they killed him for it, I think.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, just deserts, I guess. If he hadn't betrayed his own men years before, when he was just a major, who knows? That's a funny old life, isn't it? You just don't know what's going to happen next. But yeah, I hankering after one of them 1911s. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I think I'm going to have to rob a bank or something to make sure I get one of the original ones. I don't know why, but I'm really into, like, I just want what I want, and I want the first version. I know that the 1943 version or 1924 version, like the one you got there, that's a pretty gun. There's nothing wrong with it. But I don't know why. I just like the other one. It looks, to me, to my eye, it looks a little bit flatter, a little bit more squared off, a little bit more something about it. It's like the Phantom. The Phantom, the car? I don't know a damn thing about cars other than they got four wheels and they go. But I like the Phantom. The Phantom is a classic car that I would love one of those.
Yep. Drive around in your Phantom shooting your 1911.
That's exactly. I'd want two. I mean, if I had a Phantom, then I'd need to have two 1911s.
Yeah, can you steer with your knee? You're just sitting there blasting.
And I mean, if you got a Phantom, I might go for three 1911s then, because you'd want two of them that you probably want to put ivory handle grips or something on them that's a bit different. But you'd still want the original one, with the proper wooden checkered grips. You wouldn't want to mess with that. So you'd probably need three if you had a Phantom, I'd say.
Yeah, I think
so. Maybe like a little Phantom stamp or something on the grip of your ivory handled ones.
Yeah.
And they were Parkerized, I believe, instead of blued, which lasts longer, actually. Sam Patton says Patton was following MacArthur's orders, and he clearly loathed him ever afterwards. Yeah, well, you see, the thing I know now, because of my Italian friend, in the Italian criminal code, which all the armed forces, police, military police, soldiers, anybody that's basically working with a gun for the government, I think it's like rule number 1, or close to it, is a member of the armed services, whichever one, who receives what he believes to be a illegal order, or a not just illegal in terms of the legality of the law, but like not necessarily of the law of the land, but also, let's say, shoot the prisoners or something, something that goes against the Geneva Convention, or even just his conscience. As a duty, his first thing that he should do is he should immediately refuse that order and tell his superior officer, I'm refusing that order and this is why. Now, admittedly, the minute you do that, they probably arrest you, take your gun away, and do all sorts of nasty things to you. But the thing is, that is how a man should act, regardless of whether it's in a code of criminal law or not. Right. I mean, I don't give a crap who's the boss. I mean, I've followed orders before, but I would never follow an order that I don't agree with. I just wouldn't do it. And I don't care what the consequences are, because you only have one one conscience. You only have one word. You know.
That's right. All you've got. It's all
That
you've got. Is your
exactly right.
dignity and your character.
Exactly right. I'm not going to compromise that for any like general or politician. Or, in fact, as far as politicians are concerned, I would personally like them all to, whenever they start a war, they should all absolutely, everyone that votes for a war that is in government should wear a bright red uniform and be on the front line. Armed
Yeah.
only.
Whatever happened to the military general leading leading the nation?
I believe that the last leaders who actually led the charge in battle were in the Crusades sometime around 1095. They were actual princes and they actually fought with their men.
Right.
I'm not aware of, there must be, Leonidas, that was before, that was the Greeks, and the Crusaders, and I'm not aware after the Crusades really, well, no, I lie. Again, there were Catholic Knights of Malta, where their leader was standing on the wall fighting with his men, wounded in the leg at age 71. And there were, he was swinging his two-handed sword, and he didn't have time to put his armor back on, and he was wounded already. 71 years old, and his men were imploring him, please, sir, get off the wall there. You're our chief, like we can't have you die. And it's like, what are you talking about? I'm 71 years old. I've led a full life. And if I'm to die today, well, what better way to die than fighting the enemy?
Yeah.
And he was, he was quite a character. He had a couple of illegitimate children. He was banging some nobleman's wife, and he killed a man, beat a man to death for blasphemy, did some jail time for it, and then he was kidnapped. He was a slave on a Muslim galley, and then he managed to get ransomed, or he escaped. I can't remember. He was quite a character. So yeah.
I don't know why in America why we ever the last George Washington he fought on the front lines. I don't remember if he did after he became president, but during the Revolution.
That's a good point. Yeah, it is.
And I don't know when we stopped making our commander in chief stop joining his men in their conflicts. I guess after the Israelis started doing proxy wars to the United States. I don't know.
I guess that makes sense. Sam Webb says Patton and MacArthur were both far too ambitious, but I still believe that Patton was one of us. I haven't spent a lot of time looking into Patton. I got the sense that he was definitely quite a man who thought very highly of himself, as a general rule. Which doesn't necessarily mean he was a bad man, but I'm not sure it was necessarily warranted.
He's received too many accolades by Global Homo for me to trust him.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. I've been reading an interesting book, but written by a Yankee lawyer, where he goes on about his feelings and how he felt about it and this and that. But anyway, that aside, it's the book about Kamler. Kamler was the mastermind of all the secret underground, the wonder weapons of the Nazi regime. And the Americans did catch him, and he made some deal, and he was then let go. And then he kind of disappeared. There's 4 different versions of Kamler dying, kind of like the other Nazi guy that they said, oh, we just were building a parking lot and we found him, and DNA confirmed it was him. And this was the number 2 guy in the Nazi regime. What's his name? The fat little dude. I can't remember. He's
Himmler?
No, not Himmler and not Goring. The guy that was looking after all the money. Which, funnily enough, a guy called Anthony Sutton wrote 3 books called Hitler and Wall Street, and proving who financed Hitler and what happened after the war. And there's a whole bunch of accounts signed with a signature of Juan Perón, the president of Argentina, that are also countersigned by this guy. Man, what is his name? He was the chubby little dude that ran the Nazi party, essentially. Anyway, he's got his signature on the. He was the number 2 guy in the whole. Oh, good God! This is. Sam Werb says Washington, as president, had his army fire on Americans during the Whiskey Rebellion in western Pennsylvania. Yeah. You see, that puritanical stuff just got in the way of a lot of things. Oh, Borman, that's it. Borman. Borman is the guy. And he was definitely living it up in Argentina, making deals with Juan Perón that got them the whole, the Nazis had like Carlos de Bariloche is a town in Argentina that I think they still speak only German there, and they had like Nazi flags in the schools and little blonde blue-eyed kids all over the place. And you couldn't get into an area that was like cordoned off just for the Nazi military, really, that they had still Nazi like ID, and you couldn't get in there unless you had the Nazi ID. It's a very interesting story about a guy called Peter Lavenda who wrote the book about it, and it was discussing about and this guy, he's kind of a investigative author type guy who's kind of a nerd, and he's really interested into the occult and World War II history and the murky side of things. He's got this theory that the United States, northern United States of America, or rather the United States of America, Northern America, there's a lot of burial grounds that are, Native American burial grounds, but then there's stuff that's even before that, which is under these sort of hills, these giant hills that were actually burial mounds, and nobody knows too much about them. And he's come up with this idea that in some areas these things are kind of like almost portals to like some demonic type of thing that influences people that live there. And there's whole towns that are like hick towns where everybody's like, incest and rape and murder and all sorts of crap goes on there. And people like, what's that guy with the Nazi thing carved into his head? Charlie
Manson?
That's the one. People like that. And he says, there's this like demonic influences around this place. And he says, and that's part of the reason why the United States is a little bit screwed up. But anyway, he was researching these German Nazi camps, and he sort of figured out where they were. And he was like, I'm just going to go check it out. Like, the typical sort of unaware nerd. And he got to Argentina, and then he just eventually found a taxi driver that would drive him out there, although the taxi driver was like, no, I don't really want to go. Then he goes, look, just take me up to the gates, and then you can leave, So the taxi driver drives him up there. He gets out of the taxi and says, just hold on a second. And there's two, like, basically Nazi guys with machine guns go there. And like, what the hell are you doing? Who are you? Why you want to come in here? And he's like, well, I just wanted to, ask a few questions and I interview. And they're like, you better leave now before we riddle you full of holes. So he got back into the taxi and he ran away. And that's his story. It's like, I couldn't really get in there. He just, I found that quite funny.
I'm surprised the Nazis weren't like, we are the ones asking the questions.
Yeah, that's pretty much kind of what they told him. Like, what is your name and where are your papers? So, yeah, it's funny that.
That's some fine journalism right there.
There's some other really interesting stories about, like, the NASA, the beginnings of NASA, which of course was done by Werner von Braun, which was a full-on Nazi officer. But there's another guy, Karl the Bus, who's been scrubbed from Wikipedia. He's no longer there. He used to be. Who was an electrical guy, and he was like deep into the whole NASA thing. And that's why I believe that the Nazis did have anti-gravity machine, and I do believe the Americans did go to the moon. Not the way they say, though. I believe that lunar landing module had a little bit of an anti-gravity machine there, because otherwise the fuel thing doesn't work. But anyway, that's another story. But the thing is, they were shooting up rockets with cameras in them to measure whatever, and more than once the rockets would land somewhere and somebody had already been to them and taken the camera and the films out of it. And it looks like Werner von Braun was in, because they were shooting this stuff up. I think it was Florida or something that were doing the rocket things, and also, is it New Mexico? They had some stuff going on there, or
Houston, Texas.
Okay, there you go then. And apparently they had their own Nazi agents, which were probably bringing all this aerial photographs of the whole of the United States, that sort of thing. Just they were disappearing from the American rockets, and it was sort of like. And Werner von Braun was, he had a stipend and whatever, and he was driving around in cars that you couldn't afford, and nobody knew where his money was coming from. But it was sort of like, well, I guess the American government was sort of like, well, we kind of hid Kammler, who like murdered a few 100,000 people to build his things, and I guess we'll just let this guy do what he wants, and as long as he just tells us about the rockets and stuff, it's just.
And one other thing about Werner von Braun, he was a Lutheran too, so that's another bone you can pick with him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Lutheran.
I mean, you could almost understand a man being a Nazi, but a Lutheran. It's just. I don't know. What kind of a man? I never heard that. Really? That is disappointing.
Actually, an elder that went to my church, he worked for NASA. He worked with Werner von Braun, so he told me some stories.
Oh, did he confirm the one that is it Carol? I always get this woman's name wrong. I can't remember if it's Carol Rosen or Elizabeth something or other. Anyway, she worked with Werner von Braun in the 70s, and he admitted to her, and he said, oh, it's all just theater. The whole Cold War is theater. And then after the Cold War ends, and Russia will collapse, and then after that, you're going to have countries of concern. The George Bush evil axis of power. Then you're going to have these terrorist countries. And then after that, you're going to have asteroids, and asteroids is going to be the things we got to watch out for. And then after that, we're going to have a fake alien invasion. And he used to laugh about it. So can you imagine that, people believing an alien invasion? That'll be totally fake. But all of this is just so that we can get more and more of this anti-gravity stuff out into outer space. Now, there is a guy, and I can't remember for the life of me where I found it, but there's a guy on YouTube who had a big telescope, and he was filming these like spaceships essentially, and it was like, oh, there's another one, and he was tracking them, saying, I don't know where these things are, but he was tracking these giant ships that were like 200-300 meters long. And that British autistic guy that broke into the Pentagon and found a whole bunch of lists of soldiers on ships that had names and had lists of enlisted men on it, but they weren't maritime ships, they were spaceships. And apparently he downloaded some pictures and stuff, and the Americans wanted to extradite him to America. And he was like, you're just an autistic guy. I said, but I didn't delete anything. I just saved some stuff to prove to myself that this was there. I didn't delete anything. I didn't cause any harm. I just wanted to look in there. So the Americans, yeah, he's, what's his name? Something with a K. Anyway, I don't know if you ever got the book Riding the Red Horse, which is a lot of short stories. There's a short story in there by my friend that discusses this guy a little bit. Anyway, and to my amazement, the British government actually refused to hand him over, and they just said, nah, he did nothing. He did nothing to keep him in jail for the rest of his life or put him in Guantanamo Bay or whatever you guys are going to do to him. He's just an autistic kid that didn't mean any harm, so no, we're not giving him over. But, he had to go through several years of, like, legality or illegal legality, whatever you want to call it.
He got that Julian Assange treatment.
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing about Julian Assange, right? Again, Julian Assange is a guy that, on a human personal level, I don't like the guy. I can't stand him.
Right.
And there was these accusations that he raped some women, which I absolutely believe, because he's got that sort of, like that Mr. Beale guy that goes on about gammas. He's got that gamma attitude. He always had that arrogant, like, well, I've reached a position of power, so now I can do what I want. And yeah, some woman comes into my house, and she wants sex, and it doesn't matter if she struggles a bit. I'm just going to do what I want because I'm now an alpha. I'm not understanding a damn thing about it.
Yeah.
And so I believe he did do those things. And, it's the kind of thing that, like, what's that British woman that I also don't like? Miriam, whatever, the one that played the Queen. Helen Merriam, I think it's called. Yeah. And she did say something that was like, she's a full-blown feminist and whatever, but she did say something that was like, oh, well, yeah, that stuff happened in our industry. Again, occasionally some guy that you kind of half into, but not really, he like bent you over and he just did you, and well, it was just kind of part of Tuesday, Now, I'm not saying that's correct. I'm not saying that's acceptable in any way, shape, or form. But the thing is, these women were half in, half out type thing, and then they didn't like what it did. And I'm not saying that they should like it or accept it. I'm not saying that at all. But it was kind of like, yeah, he's a shitty guy, and you're kind of dumb, and whatever. Anyway, they used that to like basically try and nail him to the wall,
Mm-hmm.
which at first I was like, well, who cares? I don't, whatever. But if you look at if you look at everything in context, I think they definitely done him dirty in the kind of the extent they went out to get him, really.
Doesn't that tell you though, like how pussified our world's gotten? That
Oh yeah,
if you really trying to stick this guy with espionage and
yeah,
sabotage and
yeah.
spying, that ain't good enough. But if you do something to a woman, by God,
Well,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, and like you said, I ain't condoning that. It ain't right. But I feel like if you truly believe the espionage charges and all that stuff, that ought to be enough to stick the guy.
But you see, I don't believe that espionage charges should even apply because,
No,
well,
I don't
what a,
either.
yeah, because I mean, the way I see it, if a government, my government, whatever, I mean, I don't really recognize any government on the face of the earth as having any hold over me whatsoever, really, quite frankly, because I'm a free man and a southern man. But let us say that I did accept some government as my actual government, and that government is doing some scummy, disgusting, unpaid, just an inhuman crap, like, I don't know, using children for sex to blackmail people or whatever, something disgusting like that. I don't want that hidden. I don't want that not known about. I want my
Right.
government to be righteous and true and correct and honest and basically say, well, we have a problem with that guy, and the reason we have a problem with that guy is because he did this and that and the other, and we're going to do our best to drone him, kill him, assassinate him, whatever. I
Right.
can I can be behind that. I can sort of say, well, yeah, that guy did some bad stuff. Go after him. Or,
Yeah.
we got to protect ourselves from X, Y, and Z, so, we'll take steps. I see no problem with that. And
No.
okay, there may be some, let's say, like anti-gravity technology. I'm not against the idea that anti-gravity technology should be very carefully regulated or hidden to a certain extent, because you don't want some crazy guy having access to a machine that in a couple of hours can reduce the whole planet to a slag heap. She's got a problem with his girlfriend, and he just says, oh, life ain't worth it. I'm just going to redirect an asteroid towards what Earth, So yeah, there's got to be checks and balances, and sort of, there are certain things that you don't want out there for every, you don't want the formula for like creating some nerve toxin that's really easy to make but nobody really knows about yet. You don't really want that out there. I get that. There's some things that need to be a little bit hidden, but what did Assange do with like that whole WikiLeaks thing? All he said is like, our government is doing some really shitty things in some parts of the world that are totally against any kind of war rules. They're torturing people. They're doing
Mm.
waterboarding people. Most of the I'm no fan of the Arabs, but most of the people in Guantanamo Bay are completely fucking innocent. That's just,
Right.
pardon my French. I,
Ball
it,
guys.
it's just, you know, is that, or like that Edward Snowden guy? Again, what did he do? He told the truth about what the government is doing, intruding into everybody's life. Is that espionage? I mean, is
No.
that should that be a traitorous thing? No, I don't think so. He's basically trying to say to people, what we're doing is wrong, what our government is doing is wrong, and we should stop. And what's wrong with
You know,
that?
it's funny. We have a advertising campaign called the Ad Council here in the U.S. and they have that there was a while they did this campaign that said I think it was TSA. It was like nothing to hide, nothing to fear, and then it was like see something, say something. Well, it seems to me that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange saw something, so they said something.
Exactly.
And if the government had nothing to hide, then the government's got nothing to fear. So, you
Yeah,
know, I know it's played out and it's kind of a cliche at this point, but rules for thee and not for me. And I personally feel like if our government is by the people and for the people, we should know absolutely everything that they're into. There
absolutely so.
shouldn't be any secrets. And if
Yep.
there are, we ought to know about them as soon as as soon as it makes sense.
Yeah.
And maybe we shouldn't be involved in some of the stuff we are involved in if it's got to be kept locked up secret.
Well, like all those laboratories of biological warfare stuff that were sitting in Ukraine, that
Oh yeah.
that what the hell's that about? You know?
Did you know Ukraine is the capital of pregnant surrogate pregnancies in the world?
Oh, not just that. It's the capital of organs from
Oh really?
children. From children. Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently there's some pretty reliably looking documentation that also lists adrenochrome and how many milliliters of the stuff is drained from children with ages from toddlers to little kids on a daily basis, and they're considered patients inside they're orphans, and the things that they're doing to them to get the adrenochrome out of them is
I've just given birth to a brand new conspiracy theory. You ready?
yeah.
What if the entire Ukraine war is a put on? Russia hadn't even set foot there, and they're just using it to scare the children of the country to mass produce adrenochrome. There ain't actually nothing happening over there.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch, even for me.
Well, I told you this is a conspiracy theory. It ain't true, but hey,
Now, I got another conspiracy theory though. What if Putin is not the savior of the non-polarized world, but actually he's in on the whole scam? And this whole thing, including the Israel war, is all about getting Israel to move out of Israel and get a much bigger landmass, which is Ukraine. Now, Putin's been going on about this all being about denazification. So if the Jews from Israel all of a sudden say, well, we're surrounded by Arabs that want to stomp us out, he can hardly say no to them moving to Ukraine, which he's just liberated from the Nazis, right? So now they've got their greater Israel, which is kind of what they were after. And so maybe the whole war was just a ruse just to get a bigger version of Israel closer to Europe, more land, more everything, and away
mm-hmm.
from, the people that don't like the Jews, such as the Muslims. So
Yeah,
there's my little theory. Paranoia for today.
yeah. That's I would like to I would like to believe that Putin has Russian interest and his people's interest at heart. It wouldn't surprise me if he was in on the whole thing, but
I would
mostly
absolutely love for him to
mostly
be a
I would love
turncoat.
for him to be who he claims to be just
Yeah,
because of how much people hate him, and I love to
I
see him
I I
discredited. So
absolutely agree. Unfortunately, there are pictures of him fully wearing like Freemasonic gear and all sorts of stuff. But I'm truly hoping that he's like a turncoat to those Satanists, and that he like just went along to get along and went along until he had the power and the ability to like turn on them. That's what I'm really hoping about, and I'm kind of hoping, although I think there's a long way to go. I'm kind of hoping that the same might be true about Elon Musk. Kind of hoping that his daddy is quite a forthright kind of guy, and he kind of speaks his mind in a way that I have lived in southern Africa, as you know, and the people, white people living there, can be quite direct, to put it
mm-hmm.
mildly. And his father, Elon Musk's father, is pretty much one of those guys. He pretty much says it as he sees it. So I'm kind of hoping that those genetics maybe, get him to like realize that he's kind of gone a bit too far into the ticket buying situation and maybe pulls back from it. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
I think it's good to have hope. It's good to have things that you know. It, Christianity is not about nihilism. It's not
No,
about expecting
of
the
course,
worst in every circumstance. So
of course.
it is nice to have some public figures that aren't completely 100%. You know that they're twisted. You know, it's nice to have some folks that you
Well,
can have some hope with.
the thing is, as a proper papist, I go by the proper Catholic comment that is, no hope, no fear. I don't need hope because I'm not afraid. Because
That's right.
and I'll tell you what's even better than hope anyway. You know what's better than hope? A Colt 1911 with a full
I
load.
was about to say.
I know you were. Just had to beat you to it.
Uh, no hope, no fear. No fear, 1911.
That's it. Good gold Colt 1911. That'd be quite a good. I wouldn't do that unless I had five of them. If I had five of them and a Phantom, then I could have two with the special handle things. I could have at least one that's like untouched. And maybe I'd have one with a little stamped into the side of the slide, in Latin. No hope, no fear. Yeah, that might be. I wouldn't do it to just one gun. I would have to have a whole bunch just to make up for the. It's like a tattoo, really. It's sort of heresy to you don't want to mess with perfection, but mind you, there is a commemorative version, which I think is I need to look it up, but I think it's the commemorative version of the World War One fight in which Alvin York took part, and it's got some gold on the slide. It's got a gold etched in gold. I think a little scene of like World War One soldiers next to like some French town or something like that, and it's got like a little disc on the grips, telling you that it's a commemorative version of the World War One called 1911. But yeah,
Sounds nice.
I don't know that there are only a few guns that have that kind of iconic sort of history, and I think, funnily enough, I think the Browning 1901 is one of them, but it's just so old people don't know much about it. The Colt 1911 is another. I think, and there's also the demonic side of things. There is an equally nefarious, equally well known, but absolutely, it's right up there with global homo, the Glock. I mean, that's perversion. It's heresy and a perversion of weapons, really. But what other gun has that kind of? I suppose the Colt, the 6-gun Colt. And well, possibly the Beretta has some kind of a. But there's quite a few versions. I suppose the Beretta 92 probably. I don't know. I can't think of many handguns that
I
have
can't
that.
think of many guns that I despise. Most
Oh,
guns are pretty great.
I know, but the Glock. I mean, I
But the
can't.
Glock is a bona fide toy gun.
It is just wrong. Everything is wrong about it. It feels wrong. It just shoot. I can't shoot with them. It's just to my shame, my brother shoots well with one of them, and he's decided that because he shoots well with it, he's going to carry it. I don't know. I think it's almost worth getting shot rather than carrying a Glock. I think
Yeah.
it's.
In fact, if you're carrying a Glock, almost necessarily